Hello, welcome here. Have you ever found yourself trapped in that bewildering, agonizing space where every logical fiber of your being screams at you to let go of someone who hurt you, someone who is clearly no longer a positive life, affirming force in your existence, yet you feel an invisible, unyielding tether holding you back with an almost physical force? It is a cruel human paradox, isn't it? You acknowledge, intellectually, that clinging to the past only perpetuates your present pain, like pressing firmly on a festering wound. Your dearest friends, with their loving, well-meaning advice, urge you to just move on, to let them go. Your own mind, in moments of clarity, yearns for peace, for an end to the ceaseless rumination, for a silent reprieve from the internal torment. But despite all this rational understanding and heartfelt desire, you repeatedly find yourself replaying old conversations, dissecting past events, revisiting cherished memories that now feel tainted, and enduring that sharp, familiar ache as if the initial wound were not only fresh, but actively being reopened, moment by agonizing moment. You might whisper to yourself in the dead of night, or shout into the void of your own thought, "What is this inexplicable, potent grip this person, who caused me such profound sorrow, still holds over my heart, my mind, my very soul?" This isn't just about Fetham Fay anymore. This profound, almost debilitating inability to release the past, to sever that lingering connection, often stems from a much deeper, more personal, and far more intricate struggle. You can't truly let go of that person. This assertion might strike you as counterintuitive, perhaps even a little unsettling or harsh. Our immediate, natural inclination, in the wake of such a deep wound, is to externalize the source of our suffering. We are conditioned to focus intently on the injustice, on the egregious actions of the other person, on their moral failings, on the pain they so carelessly or deliberately inflicted. And let me be unequivocally clear. Yes, their actions were undeniably real, and your pain is not merely valid, but deeply understood and acknowledged. Yet, what if the persistent agony, the debilitating stagnation, the seemingly insurmountable inability to move forward isn't solely, or even primarily, about the external aggressor, but rather about an internal identity, a psychological construct that you have unconsciously, perhaps even defensively, clung to? What if the true struggle isn't with releasing Fetham Fay from your grip, but with transforming Fayou Fay, transforming the very narrative and identity you've built around this experience? Let us embark together on this profound psychological exploration, venturing into the labyrinthine corridors of the self, to unearth the invisible chains that bind you, and to illuminate a clear, actionable path towards genuine, liberating freedom. The illusion of them, projecting internal wounds, and the resonance of the self-profound journey into self-liberation commences with a courageous confrontation of a fundamental yet often unrecognized misconception, the deeply ingrained belief that the entirety of our enduring pain originates exclusively from them. While their actions, whether intentional or not, undoubtedly served as the powerful catalyst, the acute Fay trigger, for your initial suffering, the Fay depth Fay, the Fay persistence Fay, and the Fay choing resonance, Fay of that suffering frequently point to something far more intricate, a profound resonance with pre-existing internal wounds, vulnerabilities, or deeply held, often unexamined. The individual who betrayed you in a very real and symbolic sense transcends their mere physical presence. They become a potent symbol, an external manifestation of an internal trauma, a broken trust, a shattered ideal, or a foundational belief about your own worth, or the reliability of the universe. Consider the metaphor of a bell. When struck, it produces a sound, the Fay-striking Fay. However, the specific Fay tone Fay, the Fay resonance Fay, the Fay duration Fay of the vibration, the very Fay quality Fay of the sound produced, are all inherently determined by the bell itself, Fay its unique material composition, its precise shape, its historical usage, any existing cracks or imperfections. Similarly, the betrayer's actions deliver a power, but the prolonged, echoing vibration, the ceaseless reverberation of pain and grievance, is often a sound that your own inner landscape, your own unique psychological architecture, produces and sustains. It's not just a wound inflicted, It's a wound that finds fertile ground within existing predispositions. We are naturally predisposed to fixate intently on the betrayer's perceived flaws, their moral failings, their cold cruelty, their incomprehensible callousness. This external attribution of blame is a deeply rooted human response, an evolutionary mechanism designed to assign responsibility, to seek justice, and to make sense of senseless pain. However, this unwavering external focus, while it may feel righteous and justified, can, paradoxically and inadvertently, entrap us. It keeps our precious energy, our invaluable attention, and our vital emotional resources perpetually directed outward, constantly focused towards the original source of the initial injury, rather than inward, towards the source of our lingering, self-sustaining. We might find ourselves endlessly replaying the scenarios, mentally crafting eloquent, devastating arguments we wish we had delivered in the moment, or fantasizing about future confrontations where we finally, unequivocally, get the last, triumphant word. Each instance of such rumination, each mental rehashing, is in essence an act of re-establishing the very connection, of strengthening the very. We are not just passively remembering the person, we are actively, though often unconsciously, recreating the visceral experience of betrayal, meticulously keeping the wound fresh, raw, and resistant to healing. This self-perpetuating cycle is a cognitive trap, a loop of suffering that we ourselves maintain. The act of betrayal itself is rarely an isolated, contained event. It often feels more akin to an earthquake, a seismic disruption that can shatter the very foundations of who you believed you were, what you believed about love's enduring power, the sanctity of trust, and even the fundamental fairness or benevolence of the world. Perhaps prior to this you saw yourself as a discerning individual, insightful and capable of choosing wisely in matters of the heart, only to be left feeling utterly foolish, naive, and profoundly deceived. Perhaps you prided yourself on being strong, resilient, and unbreakable, only to feel utterly broken, fragmented, and vulnerable to the core. The betrayer's actions, then, don't merely hurt Fei Yufei as a whole. They specifically, surgically, attack and dismantle a cherished version of Yufei. They assault an identity you held dear, obliterate a future you had meticulously envisioned, and dismantle a belief system that formed the bedrock of your emotional security. And precisely because that internal identity was so deeply impacted, because that carefully constructed future was so abruptly and brutally revoked, we find ourselves clinging, often with an almost defiant tenacity, to the very narrative of the one who was hurt, the one who was wronged. This narrative, despite its inherent pain, feels profoundly real, it feels undeniably true, and in its tragedy it provides a familiar, albeit dark, context for our profound suffering, making it comprehensible within our own internal logic. The crucial application here, the first truly empowering step, is to consciously begin to distinguish with laser, like precision, between the external event itself and your deep, complex internal reaction to it. The next time you feel that familiar, insidious ache, pause and ask yourself, with honest introspection, am I focusing intently on Fei past actions, their immutable choices, or am I instead focusing on Fei current internal state, Fei wounded identity, Fei emotional reverberations? This fundamental shift in focus from external blame to internal understanding and ownership is not an act of condoning, but an act of profound self-empowerment. The essential first step towards reclaiming your sovereign power over your own emotional landscape. The betrayed self-identity, a meticulously crafted, yet comfortable this intricate understanding of our internal responses, naturally ushers us into the very core concept of our discussion, the pervasive, often unconscious, construct of the betrayed self. This is not merely a transient emotion, a passing wave of sadness, or a temporary state of acute distress. Rather, it is a deeply embedded psychological construct, a fully formed identity that takes root and flourishes in the fertile, often unexamined, soil of deep hurt, profound trauma, or sustained emotional injury. It is a specific role we often, without conscious awareness, adopt in the grand drama of our lives, a compelling narrative we repeatedly tell ourselves, and crucially, others. This identity, once established, profoundly shapes every facet of our being, how we perceive ourselves, how we interact with the world, how we approach future relationships, and how we interpret every subsequent event. Picture it as a meticulously crafted character within your own life's unfolding story, complete with a detailed backstory, a complex set of motivations, predictable behavioral patterns, and a while this identity is undoubtedly born of intense pain, paradoxically, it can offer a strange, often subconscious, sense of comfort, familiarity, and even a perverse form of security. It becomes a known entity, a predictable anchor, in a world that has suddenly violently become chaotic, unpredictable, and profoundly unsafe. Why, you might reasonably ask, would any rational individual consciously or unconsciously cling to an identity that inflicts such relentless suffering? The answer resides in the complex, often hidden concept of secondary gains. Even a deeply painful identity, even one that seems to condemn us to perpetual sadness, can offer subtle, insidious, and often unseen advantages. The betrayed self can, for instance, "I am the wronged one," this identity silently, or sometimes loudly proclaims, and therefore I am entirely justified in my enduring anger, my profound sadness, my pervasive mistrust, and my cautious withdrawal. This established position, this narrative of victimhood, can effortlessly garner sympathy, empathy, and validation from others, providing a temporary soothing balm to a profoundly wounded ego. It can also, more subtly, serve as a powerful, unimpeachable excuse. "I cannot possibly trust again," it whispers, "because I was so profoundly, irrevocably betrayed. I am unable to pursue new relationships, new opportunities, or new avenues of joy because I am still, fundamentally, broken, shattered, and scarred beyond repair." Furthermore, it can transform into a formidable, albeit self-limiting shield, ostensibly protecting you from future vulnerability by keeping you perpetually guarded, wary, and deeply suspicious of the world and its. This identity, initially conceived and constructed from an instinctual need for protection, tragically and ironically keeps you in a perpetual state of emotional defense, effectively preventing you from truly healing, from genuinely growing, and from wholeheartedly moving forward into a brighter, more expansive future. The betrayed self finds its sustenance and thrives upon the continuous narrative of injustice. It requires an external villain, a clear antagonist, to justify and sustain its very existence. If you were to truly let go of the person who betrayed you, if you were to genuinely forgive, not condone, but release, and wholeheartedly move on, then the betrayed self would, by definition, lose its essential fe raison d'être fait. It would lose its compelling story, its deeply ingrained justification for existing, its seemingly impenetrable protective shell. And for a great many individuals, the daunting prospect of shedding this familiar, albeit agonizing, identity is far more terrifying, far more disorienting than remaining comfortably within its known, albeit painful, confines. It's akin to a prisoner who has spent such an inordinate amount of time within the four walls of their cell that the very concept of freedom, with its inherent unknowns, its daunting responsibilities, and its myriad challenges, becomes a source of profound existential fear. The walls, though undeniably confining, are at least familiar. To embark on the crucial task of identifying and recognizing this betrayed self within your own psyche, engage in a period of gentle, yet incisive introspection. Ask yourself these piercing, yet illuminating questions. What specific thoughts do you find yourself repeatedly entertaining, almost compulsively, about yourself, about the situation, about the betrayer, or about the future? Do you consistently, almost reflexively, perceive yourself as a victim, a recipient of external malevolence? Do you find yourself dwelling obsessively on the past, incessantly replaying events, seeking constant validation for your pain from others, almost as if external acknowledgement is necessary for your suffering to be real? How does this entrenched identity manifest itself in your daily behaviors? Does it compel you to withdraw from social engagement, to lash out defensively, to avoid new experiences or potential relationships, or to erect impenetrable walls around your heart? Understanding these specific manifestations these concrete expressions of the betrayed self, is not merely helpful, it is absolutely crucial. It is about cultivating the capacity to become a detached, compassionate observer of your own intricate internal landscape, recognizing the character you've inadvertently been playing, and most importantly, acknowledging that Fei Yu Fei, the authentic, deeper you, are not merely an actor in this drama, but the insightful playwright, the master storyteller, inherently capable of rewriting the script, of choosing a new, more empowering narrative for your life. This awareness is the key to unlocking the prison door. The unmourned loss, grieving beyond the individual and embracing the shattered future often, when we are consumed by what we perceive as grief for the person who either abandoned us or inflicted deep wounds. We are, in a more profound and often unrecognized sense, grappling with something far broader, something immensely deeper, and arguably more. We are not just mourning the individual, their presence, or their absence. We are, in fact, mourning the meticulously constructed Fei future Fei we had envisioned, the intricate tapestry of shared experiences and dreams we had woven with them, a future that has now been irrevocably, brutally, and often abruptly lost. We are lamenting the perversion of ourselves, Fei, that existed, that thrived, that felt safe and hopeful within the context of that specific relationship. Fei, the loved self, the secure self, the optimistic self, or the trusting self, that was so deeply intertwined with that connection. And perhaps most significantly, we are often grappling with the crushing loss of Fei potential, Fei, the boundless potential for what could have been, for the grand dreams that were tragically shattered, for the fundamental sense of safety and predictability that was so violently violated, leaving an emotional void. When the hammer blow of betrayal strikes, it is rarely, if ever, just a relationship that ends. It feels as though an entire meticulously constructed world, an entire universe of shared meaning and future possibilities, violently collapses around us. The person you were Fei, your personality, your aspirations, your very identity Fei, and the person you were actively in the process of becoming, within the support of the naive self who extended trust implicitly, perhaps even recklessly, the optimistic self who meticulously built elaborate plans and shared visions of a joyous future, the secure self who felt fundamentally safe and cherished within that intimate connection. Fei, these cherished versions of you are suddenly, shockingly, gone, obliterated in the wake of the betrayal. And all too often we, as human beings, do not permit ourselves the necessary space or emotional latitude to fully and comprehensively grieve these profound internal losses. Instead, the resilient yet destructive, betrayed self-identity swiftly steps in, asserting its dominance, maintaining the wound in a perpetually open state, ceaselessly demanding an elusive justice or a comprehensive explanation that, in all likelihood, may never materialize. This relentless external seeking of resolution, this insatiable demand for answers from an outside source, tragically prevents true, internal mourning from taking its natural healing course. It keeps us in a reactive, perpetually wounded state, rather than facilitating our movement towards a state of acceptance, integration, and ultimately release. True comprehensive mourning necessitates an honest, courageous acknowledgement of the full, devastating scope of what was lost, not merely the person themselves, but the precious shared memories, the vibrant future dreams, the comforting sense of security, and most critically, the cherished parts of yourself that were inextricably linked to that now defunct relationship. It is akin to witnessing you behold the gaping raw hole in the earth where its roots once held firm, the exposed, vulnerable root system, the scattered, fallen branches. You mourn the magnificent tree, certainly, but you also, perhaps unconsciously, mourn the cool, comforting shade it so generously provided on scorching summer days, the joyful birds that nested safely within its boughs, the feeling of steadfast stability it imparted. Similarly, with profound personal loss, you must extend your mourning to encompass the entire intricate emotional ecosystem that was so brutally destroyed. The betrayed self, in its protective, yet ultimately self-sabotaging, wisdom often vigorously resists this comprehensive, deep mourning precisely because its very existence, its power, and its utility are predicated on the pain remaining active, raw, and unaddressed. If you were to fully mourn, to truly process the loss in all its dimensions, you would inevitably begin to heal. And if you heal, the betrayed self would, by definition, lose its pervasive power and its defining narrative. This fundamental conflict explains why you might find yourself unconsciously, almost compulsively, sabotaging genuine attempts to move on, perhaps by revisiting old emotionally charged haunts, compulsively rereading old messages or emails, or engaging in excessive, repetitive conversations about the excruciating details of the past betrayal. These actions, often driven by subconscious motives, are frequently desperate attempts to feed the betrayed self, to keep its tragic story alive, to prevent its dissolution. The crucial application here is to consciously, deliberately, and compassionately practice active mourning. Consider writing letters you will never actually send, allowing yourself the uninhibited freedom to express every raw, unvarnished emotion, every ounce of anger, sadness, confusion, and despair. Create a personal ritual, however small or profound, to symbolically acknowledge the definitive end of that significant chapter in your life. Grant yourself explicit permission to cry, to feel the profound sadness that accompanies such deep loss, not just the more outwardly acceptable emotion of anger. Consciously acknowledge the loss of the future, the shattering of trust, and the painful disappearance of the unwounded, innocent version of yourself. This arduous, yet transformative, process is not about forgetting the past. It is about diligently processing its impact, integrating its lessons, and ultimately finding a path towards a more peaceful, whole future. The fear of the unknown self, the terrifying yet liberating, void of reinvention if we accept the premise that the betrayed self functions as a kind of familiar, albeit profoundly painful, prison, then what inevitably happens when we begin to seriously contemplate the formidable, yet necessary, act of leaving its confining walls? The answer, for a great many individuals, is a visceral, it is the fear of stepping into an existential void, the terrifying uncertainty of asking with genuine trepidation, who then will I truly be if I am no longer defined as the one who was hurt? What remains of my identity if this defining story of pain is no longer central? Who am I fundamentally without this narrative of suffering? This profound, almost paralyzing fear is a potent, often unconscious, resistance to the very idea of self-reinvention, to the daunting task of forging a new identity. The old identity, however deeply flawed, however inextricably linked to suffering, is crucially fey non fey. It provides a worn, familiar map, however distorted or incomplete, of your internal emotion. The new identity fey, the resilient self, the healed self, the unburdened self. The wise self fey is, by its very nature, utterly unknown. It demands immense effort, profound courage, and the willingness to face a deep, almost primal vulnerability, the vulnerability of starting anew, of building from the ground up, with no guarantees. The human mind, by its fundamental design, craves certainty. Being the betrayed self offers a clear, albeit tragic and often self-pitying narrative. You understand your assigned role in this drama. You know your story by heart. You have a clear external entity to blame. This, paradoxically, provides a perverse sense of coherence, a structured framework, however unsettling or disempowering. Stepping away from this established identity means actively choosing to let go of that deeply ingrained narrative, to courageously confront the inherent ambiguity of a future where your very identity is fey not fey, defined by your past wounds. This can feel like a profound loss of control, an unnerving, seemingly blind leap into the dark, into the unknown expanse of possibility. It is akin to a seasoned sailor who has spent years, perhaps decades, navigating the treacherous yet familiar, storm-ridden waters of a specific bay. The thought of venturing out into the vast, open, uncharted sea promises ultimate freedom. Yes, but also evokes an intense apprehension of unknown dangers, unpredictable currents, and the sheer immensity of the horizon. This pervasive fear is often significantly compounded by external societal pressures, fey the unspoken, or sometimes overtly stated, expectations to be strong, to get over it, or to move on quickly. We inhabit a culture that frequently values resilience and rapid recovery, often shamefully overlooking or dismissing the profound, intricate, and often lengthy psychological work required for genuine. This external pressure can lead to a deep-seated shame regarding our lingering pain, reinforcing the insidious idea that we should be over it by now, which only serves to intensify the internal conflict and self-criticism. It is absolutely crucial, therefore, to understand and internalize that this fear is not a symptom of weakness. On the contrary, it is a perfectly natural and understandable part of the. It is a powerful, albeit uncomfortable indicator that you are standing on the precipice of profound, life-altering change. Your very being is resisting the unknown, but also yearning for growth. To begin the vital process of addressing and gently dismantling this fear, you must consciously, deliberately, and with persistent intention, start to imagine a new future self. Ask yourself, with detailed curiosity, what specific qualities would this transformed self possess? What actions, what choices, what daily behaviors would they embody? This is not about ignoring or erasing the indelible lessons of the past. It is about courageously integrating those lessons, processing them, and then actively choosing that they will inform, but not define your entire being. Your past betrayals are chapters, not the end. Begin by setting small, achievable goals that align with this desired future self, even if initially they feel profoundly uncomfortable, awkward, or even frightening. Practice mindfulness rigorously, allowing yourself to observe the fear when it arises without judgment, acknowledging its transient presence, but resolutely refusing to allow it to dictate your actions or limit your potential. This is not a battle to be won by brute force, but a gentle, yet firm, process of meticulously prying your fingers, one by one, off the familiar, albeit rusty, railing of the past, and taking a brave, perhaps shaky, but undeniably intentional step towards a future you actively, consciously, and courageously construct for yourself. Reclaiming agency and redefining self-worth, the phoenix rising gown of the most insidious, debilitating, and often deeply entrenched effects of profound betrayal, is the pervasive, soul-crushing feeling of having your personal agency utterly stripped away. When someone acts against your fundamental trust, violates your boundaries, or shatters your expectations, you are often left with a profound sense of victimhood, a feeling of being utterly powerless, helpless, a mere pawn in the face of their choices, their cruelty, or their indifference. This debilitating feeling of helplessness, if left unaddressed, can become deeply ingrained in your psyche, powerfully reinforcing and sustaining the betrayed self-identity, making it feel almost impossible to escape. True healing, however, is not merely about recovering from a wound. It is at its most fundamental core about courageously reclaiming your inherent agency. This reclamation is not achieved by attempting, futilely, to change what has already happened. For the past is an immutable landscape, but by consciously, deliberately, and powerfully choosing how. You respond now in this very moment, and how you unequivocally define yourself going forward into your unwritten future. It is about the profound recognition that while you possess no control whatsoever over their actions, you possess absolute sovereign control over your own reactions, your own interpretations, and the narrative you choose to tell about your life's journey. Our sense of self-worth is, regrettably, often subtly, and sometimes overtly and dangerously, tethered to how others perceive us, how they treat us. When we feel genuinely loved, respected, and cherished by others, our self-worth tends to feel affirmed, robust, and secure. Conversely, when we are profoundly betrayed, it can feel as though our fundamental value, our inherent goodness, our very right to exist, has been mercilessly called into question. The insidious whispers begin, "If I were truly worthy of love." This is an incredibly dangerous, deeply inaccurate, and profoundly damaging conclusion. Betrayal, in its rawest essence, is a reflection of the betrayer's character, their choices, their internal struggles, their moral compass. It is absolutely not. A reflection of your inherent worth or value. Yet, the betrayed self often tragically internalizes this blow, accepting the false premise, leading to a diminished, fractured sense of self-worth, which, in turn, makes it exponentially harder to envision, much less actively construct, a future where you are whole, complete, and profoundly deserving of love, respect, and joy. Reclaiming your agency, then, means consciously and defiantly choosing to detach your self-worth from any external validation, any approval or disapproval from others. Your intrinsic value, your inherent goodness, your fundamental worth are innate. They are not bestowed upon you by another person, nor can they, under any circumstances, be diminished or taken away by their actions, their words, or their betrayal. This is not an easy realization. It is a difficult, often arduous, but ultimately profoundly transformative and liberating truth. It necessitates an internal paradigm shift, a seismic reordering of your inner landscape, a profound commitment to self-compassion, self-affirmation, and an unwavering belief in your own intrinsic value. It means recognizing, with unwavering conviction, that you are resilient not because you miraculously escaped being hurt, but precisely because you fair-fay hurt deeply and painfully, and yet you chose to heal, to grow, to learn, and to rise like a phoenix from the ashes of your pain. How do you practically apply this monumental principle in your daily life? Begin by fiercely focusing your precious energy, your invaluable time, and your limited emotional resources on what you fake-a-fay genuinely control. You possess absolute control over your thoughts, your interpretations, your reactions, your daily choices, your actions, and crucially, the powerful narrative you choose to tell about your life's journey. Instead of passively stating, "They utterly ruined my life," you can, with conscious intent and empowering conviction, choose to reframe it as, "They inflicted immense pain, and that pain was real and valid, but I am choosing deliberately and courageously to rebuild my life, to make it stronger, wiser, and more beautiful, informed by the lessons learned." Practice setting healthy, firm boundaries, even when it feels profoundly uncomfortable, even when it evokes anxiety or guilt. Engage with active intention in activities that genuinely make you feel capable, competent, and deeply aligned with your authentic self. Keep a gratitude journal, consciously noting your strengths, your accomplishments, your small victories, and the moments where you embody your... Surround yourself with individuals who genuinely see, value, and celebrate your inherent worth, rather than those who reinforce your story of pain or victimhood. Every single act of self-care, however small, every conscious choice to nurture your own well-being, however seemingly insignificant, every moment you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, is a powerful act of reclaiming your agency and meticulous. It is a resounding declaration to yourself and to the universe that your future is, unequivocally, in your own capable hands. The path to forgiveness, releasing the chains of self-blame and cultivating inner peace, profound and often intensely challenging concept of forgiveness, stands as one of the most contentious, misunderstood, and emotionally arduous aspects of truly moving on from the devastation. Our initial, visceral struggle often centers on the idea of forgiving the person who inflicted the wound, feeling that to do so would be tantamount to condoning their egregious actions, minimizing the severity of our pain, or even betraying our own sense of justice. But what if I told you that, for many, the deeper, more insidious, and ultimately more significant struggle isn't merely about forgiving the other person, but rather about the immensely difficult, yet utterly necessary, act of forgiving ourselves, forgiving ourselves for having been vulnerable enough to trust, for not having seen the red flags, for allowing ourselves to be hurt so deeply, or even for not The entrenched, betrayed self-identity often harbors a deep-seated, relentless grudge against the naive self that initially got hurt, creating a brutal internal civil war that tragically prevents the emergence of true inner peace and genuine healing. Let us establish with absolute clarity what forgiveness fays not fay. Forgiveness is emphatically fay not fay condoning the hurtful actions. It is fay not fay forgetting the painful events, nor is it minimizing the profound impact of the wound. It is fay not fay saying that what happened was acceptable or justified in any way. Instead, forgiveness, in its most authentic and empowering form, is a profoundly personal act of releasing the immense emotional burden, the heavy psychological weight, and the corrosive internal grip of resentment and anger, purely and unequivocally for fey your own fey peace, for fey your own fey liberation, and for fey your own fey liberation, and for fey your own fey liberation, and for fey it is akin to willingly dropping a heavy, toxic, and burdensome backpack you've been carrying. Not primarily for the sake of the person who placed it on your shoulders, but for the profound relief and freedom of your own weary shoulders, your aching back, and your burdened spirit. When you consciously, deliberately release the insistent need for retribution, for vengeance, for them to acknowledge your pain in the precise way you demand, or for a perfectly balanced cosmic justice, you instantaneously free up an immense reservoir of psychological, emotional, and spiritual energy. This liberated energy, previously consumed by grievance, can then be consciously redirected towards your own profound healing, your personal growth, and the intentional creation of a more peaceful, self-actualized future. Self-forgiveness is not merely important. It is, in many respects, equally, if not more crucial than forgiving the external transgressor. The betrayed self often carries an extraordinarily heavy burden of self-blame, engaging in relentless internal monologues, perpetually replaying moments with agonizing precision, endlessly questioning, if only I had done X, or why didn't I clearly see Y? This internal critique is not just relentless, it is deeply corrosive, eating away at your sense of self-worth and perpetuating a cycle of self-recrimination. It traps you in a recursive loop of guilt and shame, effectively preventing you from accepting your past self with compassion, understanding, and grace. Your past self, who was inherently vulnerable, who courageously trusted, who made choices based on the limited information and prevailing emotional state they possessed at that specific time, unequivocally deserves your deepest compassion, not your harsh unforgiveness. That past self was, in their very human fallibility, doing the very best they could with what they knew and felt. To diligently cultivate the profoundly healing practice of self-forgiveness, begin by gently yet honestly acknowledging the presence of self-blame within you. Allow yourself to journal about these deeply ingrained thoughts and raw feelings without any judgment, simply observing them as they arise. Recognize the fundamental truth that hindsight is always 20 divided by 20, and that your past actions or perceived failures were an intrinsic, often painful part of your human experience, never a definitive reflection of a fundamental flaw in your core being. Practice self-compassion meditations, consciously speaking to yourself with the same profound kindness, understanding, and non-judgmental acceptance you would accept the universal truth that imperfection is not merely a common human trait, but an inherent, inescapable part of the human condition. Forgive yourself for being human, for being vulnerable, for having loved, for having trusted. This courageous act of internal reconciliation is an incredibly potent and transformative step towards dismantling the tenacious grip of the betrayed self and gracefully stepping into a more integrated, more peaceful, and ultimately more authentic version of your evolving self. Deconstructing the narrative, the profound power of reframing your personal story at its most fundamental level. The betrayed self is not a fixed, immutable reality. It is, in essence, a meticulously constructed face story fey. It is a pervasive narrative you tell yourself, both consciously and subconsciously, about what happened, what those events ostensibly mean fey about you as an individual, and what they constitute. This story, while undeniably rooted in very real painful events, possesses the insidious capacity to become rigid, all-encompassing and ultimately defining of your entire identity. To truly and completely let go of this limiting identity, you must embrace your inherent power to become the conscious, deliberate, and empowering editor of your own life story. You possess no magical ability to alter the unchangeable past. However, you unequivocally possess the profound power to transform the fey narrative. Fey you choose to tell about that past, fundamentally reshaping its meaning and impact on your present and future. Consider, for a moment, the striking psychological and emotional difference between two distinct narratives. The first, I was profoundly betrayed, and now I am irrevocably broken, unable to trust anyone ever again, destined for isolation. Versus a transformed, empowered second narrative. I experienced a profound betrayal that inflicted immense pain, and that pain was real. However, through this crucible, I am actively learning invaluable lessons about setting firm boundaries, cultivating unwavering resilience, understanding my true self-worth, and I am consciously choosing to build a future founded on hard-earned wisdom, compassionate discernment, and unwavering self-love. The immutable facts of the betrayal remain precisely the same in both narratives. Yet the Fey meaning Fey you derive, the profound emotional impact, and the far-reaching implications for your identity and your future trajectory are radically, fundamentally different. This transformative act of reframing is not an exercise in denial or wishful thinking. It is, at its heart, an act of profound empowerment. It represents a conscious, courageous shift from being a passive recipient of suffering to becoming an active, intentional agent of meaning, making, shaping your own reality. The betrayed self-narrative almost exclusively focuses its unwavering attention on the injustice of what occurred, on the profound unfairness of the situation, on the undeniable wrongness of the other person's actions. While these feelings of injustice are entirely valid and understandable, clinging to them perpetually and exclusively keeps you firmly entrenched in a debilitating state of victimhood. Reclaiming your personal narrative means consciously, powerfully, and purposefully shifting your focus from the disempowering question of why me? Why did this happen? To the empowering, forward-looking questions of what now? What are the lessons here? And who do I choose to become as a direct result of this experience? It actively involves the courageous seeking out of the hidden lessons, the unexpected strengths, the profound wells of resilience that undoubtedly emerged from the crucible of your pain. Every trial, every profound challenge, every moment of adversity contains within its very core the potent seeds of wisdom, of profound growth, and of personal transformation, Fey, if only we are willing to diligently, patiently, and courageously seek them out. The practical application of this transformative principle involves actively engaging in narrative therapy techniques, even informally within your own day. Journaling, for instance, is an extraordinarily powerful and accessible tool. Begin by writing out your betrayed self-narrative in excruciating detail, allowing every raw emotion and thought to flow onto the page without censorship. Once that cathartic process is complete, then consciously, deliberately, and with empowering intention, write an alternative Fey narrative Fey 1 where you are not merely a helpless victim, but the empowered protagonist of your own unfolding story, one where the betrayal is acknowledged as a significant, painful chapter, but unequivocally Fey not Fey thee, the entire defining book of your life. Consider sharing your evolving story with trusted friends, a supportive mentor, or a skilled therapist, intentionally focusing on your arduous, yet inspiring journey of healing, growth, and self-discovery, rather than solely rehashing the agonizing details of the pain itself. Pay meticulous attention to the precise language you employ when you speak about your past experiences. Are you actively empowering yourself through this conscious linguistic and cognitive shift? This deliberate reshaping of your internal dialogue can be extraordinarily liberating, allowing you to gradually yet profoundly shed the old constraining story and wholeheartedly embrace a new, more empowering, more authentic narrative for your life. Embracing impermanence, the timeless Stoic lesson in liberating, really central to the profound ability to truly let go, Fey, both of the person who caused you pain and, crucially, of the betrayed self-identity, Fey, is a deep internalized understanding and acceptance of the universal principle of impermanence. The ancient Stoic philosophers, with their enduring and profound wisdom, taught us, millennia ago, that everything in the vast tapestry of life is inherently transient. Our relationships, our fleeting emotions, our ever-changing circumstances, even our own physical bodies and mental states. Our most profound, persistent suffering often arises not from the external events themselves, however painful they may be, but from our tenacious Fey attachment to things remaining fixed, unchanging, and constant, from our fierce resistance to the natural, inevitable, and relentless flow of change that defines existence. When we experience betrayal, we are often at a fundamental level, resisting the inherent impermanence of the relationship, the impermanence of our perceived security and stability, and the impermanence of that unwounded, innocent version of ourselves that existed prior to the pain. The betrayed self-identity, in its desperate attempt to preserve a sense of identity and explain its suffering, often attempts to freeze time to keep the past wound perpetually active and open, almost as a way of preserving a certain, albeit painful, sense of self. It fiercely resists the natural organic process of healing, growth, and transformation, precisely because healing inherently implies change, and change in turn implies the terrifying, yet necessary, act of letting go of what once was. But life, in its very essence, is a continuous, dynamic process of becoming, of evolving, of perpetual flux. Nothing in the universe remains static. To attempt to force things to remain the same, to cling to a fixed past, is a futile endeavor and a guaranteed recipe for prolonged suffering. The person who inflicted the wound upon you is not the exact same person they were then, nor, crucially, are you. The circumstances have irrevocably evolved. The river of time has flowed onward, and so, too, must your internal landscape, your emotional responses, and your core identity. Embracing the profound truth of impermanence means consciously, courageously, and compassionately acknowledging that this particular chapter of your life is indeed definitively closing, and that a new, unwritten one is beginning to unfold. It means accepting, with a sense of peace and groundedness, that change is not merely a possibility, but an absolute inevitability, and that resisting this fundamental truth only serves to prolong and intensify your distress, your anger, and your suffering. This acceptance is not a passive surrender to fate. It is, rather, an active, conscious engagement with reality, a profound act of. It is about recognizing that just as the seasons of the natural world inherently change and cycle, so too do the seasons of our own lives, our relationships, and our emotional states. The intense pain you feel now is not a permanent fixture of your existence. The defining identity of the betrayed self is not an eternal, unchangeable truth. With conscious, diligent effort, persistent intention, and unwavering self-compassion, you possess the innate capacity to facilitate its gradual yet profound transformation. The practical application of these timeless Stoic principles involves diligently practicing profound acceptance. Accept with a calm resolve that the past events undeniably happened as they did. Accept that people, in their inherent fallibility and complexity, change, and that sometimes, tragically, they inflict wounds upon us. Accept with a deep breath that you possess no control whatsoever over the actions, choices, or character of others. Instead, focus your precious energy, your invaluable time, and your limited mental resources exclusively on what you can control: your own perceptions, your own interpretations, your own emotional responses, your own choices, and most importantly, the unwavering development of your own virtuous character. Engage consistently in mindfulness exercises to consciously ground yourself in the liberating reality of the present. Meditate deeply on the profound philosophical concept of change, learning to perceive it not as an adversary or a source of terror, but as the fundamental, inescapable, and often beautiful nature of existence itself. This consistent, deliberate practice helps to gradually yet powerfully loosen the tenacious grip of the betrayed self, allowing you to flow harmoniously with the dynamic current of life rather than building a future self. The intentional act of self-creation and empowerment, the ultimate, most empowering act of truly letting go of the betrayed self, is not merely about the dismantling of the old, the shedding of what no longer serves you, or the release of past pain. Far more profoundly, it is about the conscious, deliberate, and intentional act of building, nurturing, and embodying a vibrant, new self-Fey, a self that is defined not by its wounds, but by its wisdom, its resilience, and its boundless potential. This is precisely where your inherent agency, your sovereign power over your own destiny, truly shines and asserts itself. You are not merely a predetermined product of your past experiences. You are, by divine right and conscious choice, the visionary architect, the skilled builder, and the compassionate designer of your own magnificent future. The searing pain of betrayal, when approached with conscious intention and profound wisdom, can be transmuted into a powerful catalyst for extraordinary personal growth, for deep introspection, and for unparalleled self-actualization, if only you choose to interpret it, integrate it, and transform it in that empowering way. It can be the purifying fire that forges a stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and ultimately more authentic version of yourself, a version that transcends the pain and embraces the lessons. What kind of future self do you genuinely aspire to embody? If the betrayed self was characterized by a pervasive sense of resentment, entrenched victimhood, and paralyzing fear, what are the antithetical, empowering qualities you ardently wish to cultivate within your being? Perhaps it is unwavering resilience, profound self-forgiveness, acute discernment, boundless courage, and an unshakable self-love. This process is emphatically fey not fey about erasing the indelible experience of betrayal or pretending it never happened. It is about courageously integrating it as a hard-won lesson, a profound rite of passage, a visible scar that eloquently tells a compelling story of survival strength and triumphant emergence, rather than remaining an open, festering wound that continues to bleed, draining your vitality. Your intensely painful experience of betrayal, while undeniably devastating in its immediate impact, has also, paradoxically, endowed you with unique, invaluable insights, profound empathy, and an unparalleled understanding of the human condition. These precious gifts forged in the crucible of your suffering can be consciously transformed into powerful assets that will enrich your future interactions, deepen your This transformative process of intentional self-creation is not a singular momentous decision. It is rather a consistent, daily, and deliberate practice. It demands conscious effort, unwavering commitment, and gentle persistence. Begin by setting clear, empowering intentions for who you genuinely want to be, for the qualities you wish to embody, and for the life you desire to live. Visualize this. How do they authentically feel? How do they consistently act and respond to challenges? What are their healthy boundaries, and how do they communicate them? What kind of nourishing reciprocal relationships do they consciously cultivate? Then, with gentle yet firm resolve, begin to embody these desired qualities in your daily life, in every interaction, in every choice, even if initially they feel profoundly uncomfortable. If your future self is courageous, take a small, calculated risk that aligns with your values. If your future self is self-compassionate, consciously offer yourself a kind, understanding thought instead of a critical, judgmental one. Remember, every single time you choose to consciously focus on your profound healing, every single time you choose an act of self-care over the familiar allure of self-pity, every single time you choose to engage fully with the liberating reality of the present moment rather than dwelling on the immutable past, you are actively, intentionally, and powerfully building this new, magnificent future self. This, my friend, is the ultimate act of liberation, not just letting go of Fathom Fey as an external entity, but letting go of the restrictive, painful version of Fei Fei that was defined, limited, and trapped by their actions. It is about courageously embracing the boundless potential of the person you are evolving into Fei, the person who not only survived the storm, but thrived in its aftermath, who transformed their pain into profound strength, their wounds into wisdom, and their past into a powerful springboard for a future of authentic self-creation and enduring peace. If you found this journey of self-reflection insightful, if these perspectives have resonated deeply within you, and if they have offered you a new pathway to understanding and freedom, please consider giving this video a like. Your kind support is invaluable. It significantly helps us to share these crucial psychological and philosophical insights with a broader audience of people who might be struggling, yearning for clarity and guidance. And if you wish to continue exploring deeper aspects of the human mind, the complexities of our spirit, and the paths to profound personal growth, I wholeheartedly invite you to subscribe to the channel and join our rapidly growing community, a community committed to self-discovery, wisdom, and a more conscious, intentional way of living. This profound transformation isn't a simple, easy path. It is arduous, demanding courage, patience, and an unwavering willingness to look deeply inward, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to embrace the often messy, non-linear process of becoming. But I assure you, on the other side of this transformative journey lies not just profound freedom from the shackles of the past, but the immense joy of authentic self-discovery, the unparalleled power of intentional self-creation, and the enduring peace that comes from truly knowing and loving the magnificent person you are destined to become. I hope today's sharing provides you with a new, liberating perspective on the world. And more important, thank you for watching, and I sincerely look forward to seeing you next time.